Every moment you hesitate is a moment your life moves forward without your input. Miyamoto Musashi understood that indecision is actually a decision, letting circumstances choose for you. This realization led to a method that never failed across 60 duels to the death. Three principles work for any modern choice, starting with achieving decisive clarity in a world of infinite distractions. You have dozens of browser tabs open, multiple career paths you're considering, endless options pulling your attention in different directions, and your mind feels overwhelmed by the sheer volume of choices. This is the modern condition. Endless information creating endless confusion. Most people believe hesitation comes from not having enough information. They research more, seek more opinions, analyze more data. But this only deepens the paralysis. Musashi understood something that most people never discover. Confusion isn't caused by lack of information. It's caused by too much information without a clear filter. At 13 years old, Musashi faced a decision that would define his entire existence. He could stay with his adoptive father, follow the traditional path, become a respectable member of society, or he could leave everything behind and forge his own way as a wandering warrior. Most people spend months on far smaller decisions. Musashi was choosing between safety and the unknown. But here's what made his decision different from the way most people choose today. He didn't spend months weighing pros and cons. He didn't create elaborate lists comparing outcomes. He didn't seek advice from dozens of people. Instead, he applied what he later described as the void, a state of mental emptiness that reveals truth. In the void, there is no confusion, Musashi wrote. In the void, there is no deception. Think about the last major decision you struggled with. How much of that struggle came from actual difficulty and how much came from mental noise? Your brain trying to process every possible scenario, every potential regret, every opinion you've heard about similar situations. Musashi discovered that clarity comes not from adding more information, but from removing mental interference. When swordsmen hesitated in combat, it wasn't because they lacked skill. It was because their minds were cluttered with fear, doubt, and overthinking. The warrior who could empty his mind and see the situation clearly always had the advantage. This principle applies directly to modern decision-making. When you're stuck between job offers, your hesitation isn't really about the jobs. It's about the mental fog created by trying to predict unpredictable futures, comparing incomparable variables, and processing too many voices at once. The mental clearing technique Musashi developed works like this. Before making any significant decision, spend 10 minutes in complete mental silence, not meditation with mantras or breathing techniques, pure emptiness. Let every thought about the decision dissolve. Every pro and con list, every piece of advice, every fear about the future. In this space of mental void, ask yourself one simple question. What does my deepest instinct tell me? Not your fears, not your logical mind, not what others expect, your core instinct. Try this right now with any decision you're currently facing. Close your eyes for 30 seconds. Let all the mental noise fade away. Ask yourself what your instinct already knows. Notice how different this feels from the endless mental loops you've been running. The answer that emerges from this clarity isn't always what your logical mind would choose, but it's almost always the decision that leads to the most authentic path forward. Musashi's choice to leave his master at 13 seemed illogical, dangerous, and foolish to everyone around him, but it was the decision that aligned with his deepest nature. This is decisive clarity, the ability to cut through mental fog and see what actually matters. When you master this skill, most decisions become obvious. The hesitation disappears because you're no longer fighting yourself. But clarity alone isn't enough. There's a hidden trap most people fall into next. They achieve mental clarity about what they want to do, but then hesitate again when it comes time to actually commit. This is where the second principle becomes essential: committed action. You could spend the next 6 months researching the perfect morning routine, reading every productivity book, comparing dozens of frameworks, or you could choose one approach and start tomorrow. Most people choose the research. This is why they remain stuck. The modern world has created an illusion that perfect information leads to perfect decisions. We believe that if we just analyze enough options, consult enough experts, and gather enough data, we'll find the one right choice. But this search for the perfect decision becomes the very thing that prevents any decision at all. Musashi understood a fundamental truth: action creates clarity, not the other way around. There is nothing outside of yourself that can ever enable you to get better, stronger, richer, quicker, or smarter. he wrote. The path reveals itself through walking, not through studying maps. In 1604, Musashi made a decision that demonstrated this principle completely. The Yoshioka school was the most prestigious sword school in Japan, with hundreds of students and generations of tradition. They were untouchable, respected, feared. Musashi was a nobody, a ronin with no formal training, no prestigious lineage, no social connections. He walked into their compound and challenged the entire school to combat. This wasn't a decision made after months of careful planning. He didn't spend weeks analyzing their techniques, studying their weaknesses, or calculating his odds of success. He simply decided that this was his path forward and committed completely to that choice. The challenge created a series of duels that would define his reputation forever. He fought the head of the school, then his sons, then their best students. Each victory led to the next challenge. By the end, the Yoshioka school's reputation was destroyed, and Musashi had established himself as Japan's greatest swordsman. But here's the crucial insight. The complete outcome was unknowable when he made the initial decision. He couldn't predict how many duels there would be, who he would face, or what techniques they would use. The only thing he could control was his commitment to the path itself. This is where most people trap themselves. They want certainty about outcomes before they commit to action. They want to know exactly where the path leads before they take the first step. But this need for certainty is what creates hesitation in the first place. Modern neuroscience explains why this happens. When you keep multiple options open, your brain continues to expend energy evaluating and re-evaluating choices. This creates what researchers call decision fatigue, the mental exhaustion that comes from having too many possibilities to consider. But when you make a truly committed decision and close off other options, something remarkable happens. The mental energy previously spent on evaluation gets redirected toward execution. You stop wondering if you made the right choice and start focusing on making your choice work. The commitment ritual Musashi practiced involves 3 steps. First, make your decision based on the clarity you've achieved. Second, publicly declare this decision or take an irreversible action that commits you to the path. Third, immediately begin acting on this decision before doubt can creep back in. Notice how different this feels from keeping your options open. When you're committed, there's no mental energy wasted on second guessing, no endless research into alternatives, no paralysis created by too many possibilities. There's only the path forward and your dedication to walking it. The perfect decision doesn't exist, but a committed decision, followed by dedicated action, almost always leads to better outcomes than perpetual hesitation. Try this with any decision you're currently avoiding. Set a deadline, not for more research, but for making the choice. When that deadline arrives, commit completely to your decision and take the first concrete action immediately. Notice how the psychological relief of closing off options actually increases your energy and focus. But there's still something deeper that creates hesitation even in people who understand clarity and commitment. Most people live their entire lives as observers of their own experience, watching themselves make decisions instead of actually making them. You're watching your life like a Netflix series instead of living it. You observe yourself making decisions, analyze your own reactions, and constantly narrate your experience to yourself. This mental distance from your own existence is one of the primary sources of hesitation in the modern world. Most people spend their lives in their heads, running endless simulations of future scenarios. They hesitate because they're trying to live in tomorrow while making decisions today. Musashi understood that this mental time travel is the enemy of decisive action. You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain, he wrote. But you can only walk one path at a time, and you can only walk it in the present moment. His approach to presence wasn't philosophical theory, it was survival necessity. In combat, a swordsman who hesitates for even a fraction of a second dies. There's no time to consider alternatives, analyze possibilities, or worry about consequences. There's only the immediate reality of the moment and the action it demands. This mastery of present moment awareness culminated in what many consider Musashi's greatest duel. He was challenged by Kojiro Ganryu, known as the Swallow Cut, for his lightning-fast sword technique. Kojiro was younger, stronger, and wielded a longer sword that gave him significant reach advantage. Instead of arriving at the agreed time, Musashi deliberately came hours late. By the time he arrived, Kojiro was furious, agitated, and completely focused on his anger about the delay. His mind was trapped in frustration about the past and anxiety about the confrontation ahead. The duel lasted seconds. Kojiro, despite his superior technique and equipment, was defeated by a single strike. This demonstrates the power of present-moment mastery over future-focused anxiety. Kojiro lost the duel before it began because his mind was everywhere, except where his body was. Musashi won because his complete attention was available for the reality in front of him. The same principle applies to modern decision-making. When you're mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios or trying to predict every possible outcome, you're not actually present for the decision you need to make right now. Your attention is scattered across imaginary futures instead of focused on current reality. Most hesitation comes from this temporal displacement. You delay action because you're trying to solve tomorrow's problems with today's decisions. But the future is fundamentally unknowable, and attempting to control it from the present creates paralysis. The presence anchor technique Musashi developed works by grounding your attention in immediate sensory experience. Before making any decision, spend 60 seconds in complete awareness of your physical environment. Notice what you can see, hear, feel, smell. Let your mind settle into the present moment, rather than projecting into hypothetical futures. From this grounded state, the decision often becomes obvious. Not because you've figured out all the consequences, but because you can clearly perceive what the current situation actually requires. You stop trying to make the perfect decision for an imaginary future and start making the right decision for the reality you're actually facing. These three principles together, decisive clarity, committed action, and present moment mastery, eliminate hesitation completely. But there's something deeper happening when you combine them. Hesitation isn't actually about the decisions you're facing. It's about your relationship with uncertainty itself. Most people hesitate because they're trying to eliminate uncertainty before acting. But Musashi discovered that eliminating hesitation requires accepting uncertainty completely. This reveals the fundamental nature of all decision-making. Every choice is made with incomplete information in an unpredictable world. The swordsman who waits for perfect conditions never draws his sword. The person who waits for certainty never moves forward. Action always requires a leap into the unknown. Musashi's entire philosophy was built on this acceptance. The way is in training, he wrote. Not in planning, not in analyzing, not in preparing for every possibility, but in engaging with reality as it unfolds. Each decision becomes an experiment. Each action becomes information. Each result becomes the foundation for the next choice. When you realize that the perfect path doesn't exist, you become free to walk the path that actually does exist, the one in front of you right now. The warrior's way isn't about avoiding mistakes. It's about making decisions from a place of clarity, following through with commitment, and remaining present for whatever unfolds,